The Volume Podcast.
My name is Maria Axente. I work for PwC UK, and my work, which is really exciting, I have to say, I'm very passionate about it, revolves around the ethics of AI and how do we build, design, and use technologies that are aligned with our values. And in my journeys for the ethics of AI, I've been working with some of the best people in the world, so not just very passionate, but very kind and very knowledgeable within the AI community, for us to shape a narrative that accounts for the problems that humanity has at the moment that could be solved with technology, and also being able to separate what problems we should not ever potentially ever solve with the use of technology. And I'm delighted to be here, but it's much more to me than me working at PwC, and perhaps we'll just let my employee hat outside, and we'll focus our conversation on something else that has less to do with my work and more to do with the world.
So what do you think it's in you that drove you towards this, your work and your story?
That's such a beautiful question, and I think you are probably the first one to ask me externally, because obviously there's the tiny voice in my head that it kept on keeping me honest as I progressed through my career. But I think it was a burning desire I had since early ages for me to be able to use my work in the benefits of the others and do it meaningfully and with impact. And while I remember when I was back in Romania, my native country, and I remember one of my first jobs was in a business executive position, and although I was happy, I was doing a phenomenal job while I was very young, because obviously during those days in Romania you would need to have just courageous, brave people who just take on different jobs. You didn't have to have experience. It was something on the back of my mind keeps on saying, how can I be more useful to the people around me? How can I put the work I'm doing and all this, the effort and energy to do something bigger than making someone richer? And while it didn't necessarily happen, because I ended up doing an MBA and then ended up working for big companies and still working for profit, there was something that, keep on bringing me back. How can I use my work to do more good than making people richer? And I feel like I finally made it into that place when I can use everything I have, and not just my energy, but my knowledge and my passion to do this. But it was there all along. It's just I had to pace it out and be patient and wait for the right moment. And I feel that this is the right moment.
And how would you describe and explain your work and your process and what you're working on right now?
So, yes, my work is, I would say, a pioneering one, is because it's, we're doing it for the first time at this level and in this way in PwC UK. So I give you a little bit of a history of where we started. So about 4 years ago, we set up for the first time our Center of Excellence on AI. And while at the time when I arrived at the center, I was coming from consulting, I would have had countless client engagements in the world of digital transformation, data, and a little bit of AI. But by the time I arrived at this, the firm was very much determined to create a center of excellence where we will be able to build not just the point of view and the vision of what AI means for us and for our clients, but also being able to work with others in the wider society to understand what this technology is. And if for the first year I spent alongside my colleagues, we were very much like in a startup environment, which was really peculiar, because here we are in a 4 billion pound corporation, while we were still feeling like a startup, although we had lots of perks of being part of a corporation. But still, we had a lot of freedom to go and explore and engage with various parties to understand, but really, what is this technology about? And I'm proud to say that by the time we started this outreach, I think the dialogue on AI started shifting from a purely engineering problem into an acknowledgement that this is much more than engineering, much more than the data and the algorithms and the infrastructure and the computing power and the integration is a technology so powerful that we need to spend time to understand how it works, how it reflects the context is being created and the context still is going to operate, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult for us to use it correctly. So in this story, gradually I've understood that it's the importance of ethics and values, or a value alignment for this technology, like nothing before. So the previous technology or everything that we have worked before have not had to challenge our who we are as people, as this technology we call AI does. So that was the moment when I started focusing more and more. I had the opportunity to bring my I wouldn't say academic, because an MBA I wouldn't consider that's academic, but I did focus in during my MBA on corporate governance and business ethics and strategy. So I was able to bring that back to you, back and surfaces, and being able to grow this story my work at the moment is focusing on three different layers. The one probably in the middle, which is the most exciting, is at the product level and team level. So I'm working with my colleagues. The products we developed are very much unique, are problems that are not out there yet. There's very little awareness that in fact those are problems, are at the border with opportunities. For example, you have a lot of data those days, and you just look at all this data you have collected about your employees, and you say, what do we want to do with this data? What can we do? What should we do with this data? And this is the type of exercise where you step in is very much is creative, but it's like a scientist, because you have a lot of tools that you can experiment, but in the same time, it raises a lot of potential questions that if we have all this data and we start learning all these insights about people, do we really want to know it? Because there's so many consequences of knowing or leveraging this or bringing this in the decision making. So this is one of the areas. So very much focusing on a product level and working with my product development teams. The other one, still a product level, is about team inclusivity. So how do we build teams that foster a certain type of culture that goes well beyond the tech bros type of computer science cultures that are very exclusive, still very much focused on engineering. They will allow people like possibly user experience and some business analyst or interpreter, but that's about it. So I think it's a lot of focus for us to really bring diverse and divergent ideas and voices and let them disrupt us. For example, if we have a project that looks at biometric data and personal data, to bring psychologists and sociologists for us to understand a little bit, dig a little bit deeper, and said, if we are collecting this type of data and looking for this insight, what's going to be the psychological impact on a person? And very much looking at, when you use wearables. So I'm the proud owner of a smart ring that monitors my sleep. And although I'm not a fan of other wearables, this one has done wonder, because it helped me on one hand to see and monitor something that is so impactful for all of us, which is sleep patterns and sleep behaviors. In the same time, has influenced me positively to make radical changes the way throughout my life, because sleep is a reflection of everything we do, to be able to have better sleep. And with that, you have everything is going better and better and better. So to the same extent, it's like something we haven't had to do before, right? So why would you consult with a psychologist? Said, yeah, because there's so much we don't know, and it's almost like we're going to open a Pandora box, and we feel that we have a duty of care to actually make sure that we understand all this, right? So feel like data scientists those days should have the same duty of care like doctors, especially when we talk about personal data. As a doctor looks after their patients and everything in relation to their patients, same albeit the data scientists, they actually need to apply the same due diligence, because just because you don't see a person because it's converted in number into a data set doesn't mean there's not a person there. And what you do right now could have dramatic impact over their lives. But briefly, I'll mention the other two levels. One is the company level, that we are now looking to expand what we have learned in our team across the firm and in areas like data. So apply the same principles of responsible and ethical AI and methods to the wider company, but probably there's something for the coming years to come. And the second one, which I'm very passionate about, is empowering a personal level. How can I can support my colleagues, coach them, mentor them, empower them to start this journey of asking the right question, of questioning the unquestionable, to be able to apply their critical thinking, which is at the core of ethics, ethical reasoning and thinking. Because I think also we need to, move from the idea that ethics is about the Aristotle and Humes and Plato's and Kant's of the world. And it's in fact the capacity to question, to inquire for morality in everything we do, in the daily day activities. More importantly, the ones related to our work in tech, which is something very new to us, right? So none of us has experienced this absolute power. And yes, we don't even consider there's a responsibility that I'm actually the holder of so much sensitive information about people's lives. And if I don't design that algorithm as, in a certain way, it's gonna damage. And do I wanna be responsible for that? Am I even aware? I love to be part of podcasts like yourselves and all sorts of external meetings, because I think there is very much all of us working in this field. We have a duty to raise awareness and not just to speak with each other, but to reach out to people that actually do it, and being able to take them on a journey, because we get it now. We understand. Some of us, I've seen a lot of people in this, they are being burned from inside with this desire to do good, because they see the dangers and they want to stop it, and they know they can't do it by themselves, right? So we need others. So that's the third layer. It was a long answer, but this is what I'm doing.
No problem with long answers at all. So how does working with this and thinking about this and studying this change your vision of the world?
Oh, how does it change? Generally, it made me pay attention much more to the people around me, work or not work related. It just makes you much more aware of what happens out there. But in the same time, you can't be aware of the others if you don't build your self-awareness. And that's probably the journey that is and should be the purpose of all of us on this planet. The minute you understand who you are, then the goodness that you are capable of, and hands on heart, the core principles I guide my life is that all people are good, and they're being made evil or bad because something has happened in their childhood, more likely. That's why I'm so passionate about topics like AI for children, and I dedicate a lot of time to this project, is because if a child is hurt when he's a child or she is a child, they will turn out to be, bad individuals because they're hurt inside, and they will try to silence that hurt or to take it out on other people. So I think it's obviously very difficult when you grow up in tough environments like we know in our countries, and especially with limited economic possibilities and opportunities. But nevertheless, I think it's really important for us to attempt to look for ourselves in ourselves, and with that is the power to actually recognize the other in front of you as more than a screen, more than a fake Instagram post, into a person with flaws and needs and so much to offer to the world. And working in this field, obviously, it gives you so much perspective, because ethics is about perspective, and you can't be good at your work. And it's like, when would you be good at your work? I feel like this is exactly the type of job that is very difficult to judge on a short period of time how well you're doing your job. I think it will be I will probably see it in years to come if I have done it right. But one thing is for sure is that in this field, you have to challenge yourself to get out of your box, to challenge yourself to get out of your comfort zone and look out for perspective, and do the same. Encourage people to open their mind, to watch out for biases and prejudices. And I'm not talking now biases against people, but biases against, or preconceptions. And it's hard, because as we know, as we grow up, is those preconceptions that form our shortcuts. If you know, that's what bias is, right? In psychology, bias is defined as a shortcut of the brain to allow us to function faster and better, so we are more and more efficient. As our body slows down, our mind has developed a more efficient way to cope. Therefore, a slow in the or slow of the metabolism is increased by a higher efficiency of the brain. So, and that's why ethics is so interesting, is because it goes there and say, I disrupt the status quo. I'm going to challenge you. And this is, sometimes I call myself, I'm naming myself a chief agitated officer, because that's my job, just to land somewhere and turn it around and help my colleagues to reach out for points of view. It's so healthy, because suddenly you see other people you didn't see before. One of the big dangers with racism, and I keep on saying to myself, I obviously I don't consider myself being racist, is that we have our bubbles, our social bubbles, and we rarely go out of our bubbles. And therefore, because we are so close to our own kind, we don't understand other people's perspective. And either we ignore them or we judge them because we don't understand them. And this is the moment the AI offers us, is that we can go out there and understand different perspectives. And it's not just about us working in this field. It feels like it's the moment, right? When it's the right time to shake the hand with someone that you would have never ever shaken. Might be that a traditional enemy from history coming. So two countries that do not get along each other, or there have been war and they've been hurting, each other's nation. Now is the time to do it in an honest way, not just pointing fingers like has happened with the US elections. This is not a way to go forward. The way to go forward, if we are to live up to that dream of inclusivity, is to listen to each other. And to listen to each other is the first step for us to understand each other a little bit better. I don't have to agree with you and you don't have to agree with me, but let's at least respect each other. And from there, I think it's a perfect foundation to be building, better words.
Something that we have to consider as well is that we're trying to have these conversations in platforms that were built for advertising and reaction, right? So how do we survive all this? How do we keep the conversation going using these devices or these platforms?
Listen, I think all this happens is because we are addicted, like drug addicts of technology. That's it. End of story. We feel like, this techno solution is promoted by the tech industries for so long, has got us into our bones. So let's admit it. As back in the days, 30 years ago, everyone was smoking, and even it was acceptable for teens and even children to start smoking. But now it's like such a no-no. I hope that we will do the same with our relationship with tech, because even if it's physically you don't see the harm, there are lots of damage that is doing to us. And it will take years for us, because it was nothing that it is we had no comparison with any other events in the past, right? So while smoking was something that people were doing for the millennia, having this technology or us being connected all the time, on all the time, and bombarded with so much information and so many options is something that we haven't had to do before. Therefore, I think it's difficult for psychologists to grasp the impact on development and where the harms occur. But what I think is that we need to step back and we need to turn off the screen, the gadgets, and just connect with each other. Is actually not that difficult. And I think it's if any of our listeners are fans of the Silicon Valley crew, and if you watch Social Dilemma, which by the way is a documentary I dislike, and I'm trying very much not to say the word hate, because I'm not that person, but I dislike with passion for so many different reasons. But there are a few bits and bobs that are good about that film. And if you know to read between the lines, there's something that those guys say, and it's something that we knew about, likes of Steve Jobs' children, and so Bill Gates. They grow up without technology. All those people, the ones that have architected the technology we use, they send the children to Montessori schools. They raise their children with no technology. So wake up. Technology is not necessarily the future. So, but it feels like we are sometimes looking for such elaborated and complex solution to this tech problem. It's very simple. Turn it off, unplug it, go out, smell a flower, observe the people, shake a hand. It's probably not possible right now, but this will at some point, we will go back into interacting with each other. And if there's one thing that we should take away from this pandemic is, let's just stay with each other physically, not virtually, physically. Shake hands, embrace each other, observe the smiles, do everything that you can't do online. And that's when you start understanding what is it to be a human. I think it is like this continuous daily bombardment and all those platforms and all this fake information and information. It's just driving us nuts. It makes us forget that we are humans. We are, becoming something else, which is not necessarily human. I'm sorry, quite passionate about it, but that's the reality.
Yeah. And we touched on the subject of children and technology. What you can tell us about your work for UNICEF?
Yes, I don't have children yet, but I love children very much. So I have a bunch of godkids, and apparently I'm quite a good godmother, judging for the creativity I put in present buying for birthdays and Christmases. I think I outdo myself. But it's a hard job, because every single time I have to come with a better idea than last year, which was amazing. So I have to amaze myself. And but it was about 3 years ago when, out of the blue, I was working with a friend of mine who is a AI researcher at Cambridge, and we wrote an article for the PwC website. It's raising children in the age of AI, and it's that time when I posted for the first time with the hashtag AI for children. Both of us at the time, no children, and the article went viral in PwC. It was not just the second most read article on our website, which is the second, right? We write so much. It's a big company, and we produce a lot of, content. But has inspired people at World Economic Forum and also people at UNICEF to start initiative on this matter. I was so surprised, because at the time, all we wanted with Johnny Penn, my co-author of the article, is for us to raise a little bit of awareness. And we line up some outlets here in UK to organize a bit of a competition for children from school to ask them what do they think about AI. And we run that with the UK Parliament. And it was amazing because we had, inputs from a lot of children in the UK, and we brought their drawings in the Parliament, and it was really, really interesting to see how they experienced, but also the fact that for them AI is something so abstract. All they could imagine is things to do with robots. And then since then, I think is that things are just come out naturally because I work in ethics of AI, and of course one of the biggest components in the ethical analysis is understanding the users, direct and indirect, and the ones that are hidden. Children become, as I would say, probably one of those categories that are not observed by anyone who designed. The fact that YouTube have told us in one of a World Economic Forum that they have designed YouTube for kids, and then they realized that all the kids were on a big YouTube, and was the same with Facebook. And one thing led to the other, and obviously because this is an area I'm so passionate, I ended up working with UNICEF and being able to contribute as much as I can with my experience to their initiative. And we have this amazing documents which I encourage all of you to have a look at, because we start now piloting the framework in various countries, and we have few governments that line up to pilot it, and hopefully some organization. But the work that happens at World Economic Forum Generation AI is actually to take this framework to a lower level and say what sort of tools we can create for organizations that develop technology to include children in their design, even if they don't design products for children. And that's the case with a lot of what happens in the digital world. The fact is that the children are around those digital technology by default, right? Look at the Alexas and the Cortanas and Siris. The Alexa are, the children are around all those digital assistants. It's the same with children going about their lives and in transit. And we have all those CCTV cameras in the big cities, and their imagery being collected and processed with facial recognition technology. Children are, unfortunately, when they get sick, access a medical system that gradually uses artificial intelligence. But none of those cases, children are considered. The fact that their exposure not just to screens, but to a screen that is designed to personalize an experience. And we know children are in development, so for them personalization is the opposite of diversity required for development. Therefore, how do we do it? Parents, in all fairness, I mean, you probably are in a very lucky place because of the work you do, but most of the parents around the world, they have no idea, that not just the parents, that the vast majority of population, they have little idea how AI works, and the fact that, that personalized experience you get now everywhere is because of an AI. It's a interaction you don't even know you have with those learning algorithms. And it's the same for children. The algorithm can promote content that the child was interested yesterday, but today he's moving, or her is moving to another discussion. But guess what? The algorithm doesn't know that, and they will continue show up the same content on over again. And that's one of the key limitations of machine learning. But if, for example, those in the AI in education are thinking about these issues, none of the others are thinking about it. And also the parents, which we think should be much more educated and aware of the dangers, and being able to form this trusted relationship between themselves and children and the digital technology, and being able to kind of raise the children not just offline but also digitally. As you raise your kid offline, you do it the same digitally. because the same danger, even greater dangers are online. The only problem is that online you don't see anything. And the damage that happens, the harms that are inflicted, you also don't see it physically. So it's hard to grasp, but they're still there. Doesn't mean that if you don't see it, it's not there.
I think you answered this quite brilliantly, but how do you think this affect the life of the people that listen to the podcast right now?
In ways that they don't know. And that's the big problem, right? That's why I'm so furious with Social Dilemma, is that they show us harms, but still not the ones experienced day to day. And the biggest harm that we experience, or at least some of the people experience, is not a I would say immediate consequence of using technology, but it's further down the line. And of course, it's not just due to technology, but if first technology makes it worse and worse by the hour, is the inequalities and the growing inequality, and the fact that those are deepened by the year now. So it's that's, to me, it's the alarm bell I will ring, is the fact that even if you feel that it's not it doesn't harm you, because other than you probably not being as agile and losing a little bit of sight because you spend too much time in front of the screen, you think it's not much damage. But I would just ask everyone to take a minute to reflect and pause how your opinion about one topic or another have been influenced by what you see online, and make this experiment. Like, pause, delete all your news app, and stay away from social media other than being in contact with your friends and communicating with your friends and family, and come back online then and see how do you see those news to you, how do you ring, because it feels like on one hand there's this bombardment of information is potentially too much for us to process, and then there's no wonder we are all stressed out and anxiety level are off the chart. They need to create new charts to measure those level of anxiety. Is because we are exposed to all this and we don't have time to reflect for ourselves, to think for ourselves. The biggest danger, guys, is that we have delegated thinking to algorithms. We can't choose a film because, it's easy. Look, Netflix has proposed a new film, so why should I look for another? And, really understand what I like and try a few options before I click on their suggestions. That's what we have done so far. We have delegated thinking and reasoning to algorithms. Are you happy? If so, go ahead. But if you're not, if you're happy with what has happened in the last few weeks with the election and the debates, especially the debates, then go ahead. So.
And how do you think your work will be in 10 years? What do you think you're going to be working on?
My dream would be to retire in 10 years, but I don't think it's the case. Retiring, not for the point of view, I want to go up on an island and do something. At some point, I wanted to do this and go completely off grid because, yes, at some point I had my moments I couldn't cope with the volume of information, but I still know myself. I can't just stay on a desert island and do nothing. I will die slowly. It's about me hoping that those will become BAU and people will not need people like myself to ask all those questions. But I feel I wouldn't be the case. This is what we start now, is a deeper, profound change, culture change, and we need to allow ourselves to take the time. We need time and patience and practice, and fail and practice and have patience and try again. And there will be a lot of things to do to this aspect, to change this mindset from the ones we have right now, where especially with technology we are acting upon the mantra, can I build it? And if I can, meaning I'll just do it, look again at Silicon Valley, and replace it with should I build it? And that difference in between can and should it's so fine that almost you cannot see it. But if you take a step back and you reflect, you will realize that is a fundamental change from can I to should I, because that should implies that it's not just about being able, having the right, all the right elements to do it, but it's also, is it morally permissible for me to go ahead, even if I have this data? Is it moral for me to use it to infer this insight? So I think I will be still in this position, but hopefully I will see more people doing it and less people talking about it, because I think it's less you talk about it, more you do it. But I feel it was still a long way, because there's still a lot of people that are not yet convinced that this is an important, a critical activity when we build technology. They still operate, oh, this is just a nice add-on. And even if, yes, I agree with you and I will operate based on should I, it's still an afterthought. It's not central to what we do.
Maria, those are the questions I usually ask, but I just feel the urge to ask if you would like to make a final comment, or was there any specific subject that we did not touch on?
Yes, I think it's what we need to be doing for ourselves, to ourselves and the ones around us, is to acknowledge that we are human, we are just people, and the ones in front of us just people. And why would I say this? Sounds basic, but when you work in front of the screen and you design an algorithm or you process a data set, you tend to forget that. And I think this is something that we should always remember, that even if we capture someone's attributes in number and we store it in a table, there's still a person at the end of the screen. And if you have that in mind, and if you force yourself to have that in mind all the time, I think we would be in such a better position. I think a lot of us forget, because face it, a lot of people are passionate about their jobs, especially in technology. They love what they are doing. It's a very engaging and stimulating mental exercise, this software development. But this is what we need. And if it's difficult for you, it's an exercise we need to be doing every day. Perhaps do something as easy. Build technology with your children in mind. Whenever you see them, make sure that what you do will actually be good enough for them. And that will change the mindset. But until we think about it, that the technology we build is about people, with people, for people, we're still going to make these mistakes, no matter how many principles, frameworks, checklists we do. It's not. We don't build technology for the sake of it. We don't build technology to build a new life form. And we should never, we're not gods. Although we love that. We love to think we're gods. Look at how many white blokes in Hollywood, they have ended up putting, the most exciting films with robots in artificial beings. No, we're not. Let's stay present. There are some people who will continue to dream, but with the vast majority of us, we're going to continue in building boring technology, but that boring technology could be very harmful. So let's just make it right and think about, there's a person at the end of the screen. How would I want to build this? Am I doing enough to protect them? Do I know what impact it will have? If I don't, I should stop, go and talk to my boss, and let's do something about it.
Maria, thank you so much.
Very welcome.
The Volume Podcast.
If you have any questions or feedback you would like to share with us, we are at Twitter at Volume Podcast. Thank you so much.